when we did Planet of Storms in October '96, I had no idea that I would ever do it again. It was just, it was great that we got permission to do it, and I had a chance to do it, and we'd done a good show, and oh hooray, that was really good fun, and yeah, that was really nice. I had no idea, and it was going to lead on to anything, but unbeknown to me, in the audience one night, I think it was the last performance, was someone who I didn't know at the time. I think I'd met him briefly, but I didn't really know him, called Rob Thrush. And Rob was a friend and colleague of David Head, who played Security Commander Bouchier in Planet of Storms, who was an old actor friend of mine. And Rob is also a Doctor Who fan, and he came along to see it, and he seemed to really like it. I remember chatting to him at the after-show party. I can't remember if at that stage he mentioned his projects. I don't remember. I might have had too much to drink. But anyway, but some time later, a few months later, Rob got in touch with me. This was the early part of '97, and said he was a bit of a filmmaker on the side. It's no longer on his side anymore. He does it for a living, and he was going to make a Doctor Who fan film. Because he used to run a film course at the art centre he worked at, and they did a theme every year, and this year it was going to be Doctor Who. So in the weeks he would be working with children making it, but on the weekends he'd reuse the fact that they built Daleks and had sets to make his own proper film for himself, really. So he was obviously very busy those few weeks, and he'd made a few before. And had a sort of a continuity in his own Doctor Who universe, which included a new unit team. Headed by Colonel Harvey, the Magnificent, Vincent Adams. And for one reason or another, the chap who normally played the Doctor with him wasn't available, and he liked what he'd seen me do in Planet Storms and asked if I'd do it. Of course, I said yes, because it was lovely to be asked, and it was thought, oh great, I'll get to do the Doctor again. So a little while later, and we filmed it in the summer, July and August '97. It was unbelievably hot that year, and he sent me the script, which was a very, very good one. It was sort of it was a kind of it's a typical sort of unit Pertwee-ish story, very nice, very, very Doctor Who-ish, lovely script, and the Doctor in it was really quite, again, like a generic Doctor. There were no character traits or quirks, a bit like Planet Storms, and Rob and I had a few chats about what to do. The first thing that sort of changed, as sort of progression in the part, was that he didn't, because we were shooting it in black and white, that he wanted it to look like '60s Who. So we were filming it in colour, and then he was going to grade it down so it looked like the old 1960s stuff, which worked very well. He said the costume you wore on stage won't work because it's a bit dark. I'm worried it'll get lost, so can you find a different costume? So my costume had to change, and I remember at the read-through, we had a read-through before we started shooting, I had a beard, sort of full face beard, because I was gearing up to play Dr. Watson a few weeks afterwards again, and I was going to shave down to a moustache. I said, well, presume you want me to shave, because I was clean shaven like the Doctor usually is in Planet Storm, which is not my default setting. I usually have some sort of beard. And he said, yes please, and someone else, I can't remember who, said, oh, I think he looks good with the beard, because it was quite long, not as long as this is for something else, but it was generally all over, and they were like, oh yeah, and Rob said, oh actually it makes you look a bit older, because I do look quite, even in my advanced years, I have a rather youthfulish face, and it did make me look a bit older, which helped, and so we decided to keep it, and I sort of put some makeup on it and greyed it up, and called it the Badger beard. So the fact that I became a bearded Doctor kind of came around by accident, but I'm glad I did it now, because I think it suits me personally, and there's a lot of yourself in how you play the Doctor, so that was nice, it worked. And my face does look better with a beard of some description. But the interesting thing about the evolution of the character was my Doctor in the Planet of Storms was very energetic and run-aroundy. And very theatrical, but I'd done enough acting and studied enough to know that obviously acting on camera is very, very different to acting on stage. The camera will capture your thoughts, but the stage will capture your actions. So I thought, I've really got to take this down. I'd never done anything on film before, it was new to me. So I just thought, well, I've really got to underplay this. And that's what I did. I just did it small and quiet and just let the character kind of take care of itself. But it just seemed to work. So I suppose if you were to watch Planet Storms and then watch The Millennium Trap, you kind of think I was playing two totally different Doctors. But it wasn't a conscious effort. It's just the way it turned out. But it seemed to suit. It seemed to suit the tone of The Millennium Trap, how it was, and it seemed to suit me. So it works. As long as it works for what you're doing, that's fine. Because I had no idea after Millennium Trap that I'd ever do anything again. So it was just, I was just thinking, oh great, I've got to play the Doctor twice now, once on stage and once on video. This is really exciting, and I'm hugely grateful for it. And imagine I've got to actually fiddle with the TARDIS console, flick switches and everything like that. And didn't have any corridors to run up, but I did get to run around a quarry. So that would have been enough for me, I think, if I never did anything else again. That was great. So yeah, the evolution of the character from Planet Storms to Millennium Trap was a bit of serendipity and just happened through circumstance, but it led on to other things. Millennium Trap finished with the Doctor being exposed to Tyrannium and regenerating. And I think the idea was that because Millennium Trap featured me and not the chap who played the Doctor, who's Jim Harper. I think the idea was that this was supposed to be before that Doctor came along, obviously, so it was like a lead-in, and then Jim would carry on and do more. But as it happened, it didn't turn out like that. So I regenerated into Jim at the end of the Millennium Trap. Rob and I sort of hit it off straight away when we worked on Millennium Trap, and we've been very good friends and colleagues ever since. And he joined my theatre company because he dabbled in stuff, and he's a great theatre company member to have because he's a good actor. He's very proactive, and he does technical stuff as well. So he was great. He was great to have on board, and he had an idea. He had an idea to do the Web of Fear as a stage play, and this, of course, was the days before we'd found it. Well, not that we'd found it, but the chap had found it, and he thought to do a lost story as a stage play would be a great idea, and said, do we want to combine our two resources and do it? And I, of course, said, yeah, sounds great. So that was how the whole next cycle of stage plays, or next projects I was involved in, got going. Rob had this great idea of doing the lost stories as stage shows. And of course this was back in, when did we do Web of Fear, which is the first one, 2000. This was obviously before Doctor Who was back and before it was big business, and the BBC was still very helpful and approachable, and didn't mind you doing things. So it was easy to get permission, so we did that, and the one, Web of Fear, led on to Fury from the Deep, and then on to Evil of the Daleks, and on to the Dalek Master Plan, so we did the four. With the Web of Fear, obviously it was Rob did an edited down version of the original script, and he asked me to play the Doctor again, and it was really then at the start that my Doctor, as he is now, or as he's known, really started to take proper shape, because the first two had been, not stumbles in the dark, but just trying things out. So whether I think it's the same Doctor, I don't know. I've never really thought it in those terms. I presume it is because it's just me. But when you're doing Doctor Who like this, or doing anything like this, you don't know there's another one coming necessarily. You hope there might be, but by the time Web of Fear came round, it felt like, oh, this might be a regular thing if this goes well, and it did go very well. So it was not important, but I suppose then it started to sink in to me that I should find not a continuity, but a path that my Doctor it follows on and is familiar. So Web of Fear, I started to find that. But Web of Fear was tricky because I'd never obviously read a Patrick Troughton script before. But when I got it, the Doctor's part in it is actually quite dull. That's not a criticism of the original script at all, but it just shows you, my God, how good was Patrick Troughton to make what is basically a series of questions and then asking answers. It's sort of a detective part, really. Make it so entertaining and so interesting. So that was really tricky. Web of Fear was the trickiest one for me, just to try and make it interesting. And I was worried about people thinking I was going to copy him and this sort of thing, but I wasn't. So Web of Fear was a very interesting experience. It was a good experience because it was a good show and a very tricky show. We did it at the Portsmouth Arts Centre, and a lot of very similar scenes, and especially in the lab, fiddling with the control sphere with Alice, who played Anne Travers, and we'd be there in the blackout thinking, which is that? What's that one? Where's that one? Is that one? Oh, quick, the lights are on! There's that one. Yeah, oh, it was a nightmare. But it worked very well, and it was obvious that there was mileage in these. So when we got to Fury from the Deep, which was 2 years later, that's when I think my doctor sort of took flight and became settled, and how he's been ever since, really. So yeah, it was interesting. He is the Doctor, but I don't necessarily think of one having to be the same as the one before. Not until Web of Fear Straight Through from the Deep anyway, because I sort of got into my stride by then. Yeah, so when you don't know there's one coming next, you just do what you've got to do. But when it became apparent that there would be one next, that's when you had to make some definite decisions.